This talk is about insights from today's human sciences being put to work in an architectural practice, architectural offices, and organize that effort by taking a new look at a refreshed humanism. Richard Neutra's work showed us a way to start, and it also showed us how far the generations of architects who followed him have drifted away from the mainstream of modern culture. The defining enterprise of modernism is not styles and battles of styles, but the maturing of reliable sciences and exploring beneath the surface of things and applying those insights in practice. Since the early, since the early modern years, 1850s, England's Crystal Palace has been telling us the story about how to do that well. It was built to celebrate a new industrial technology that was emerging out of the sciences of its time, and we still are drawing on and developing and often imitating it, in part because, as you see, it speaks to us in an appealing language of an earlier classical humanism. And since then the sciences continue to underlie construction technology have been continuing to revolutionize the way we build. But as this group well knows, the advancing insights of human life, of human sciences, in the enormously promising neurosciences that this symposium is exploring, and also in the interrelated evolutionary and ecological sciences, human health. In other words, the sciences explore how you and I actually experience architecture subjectively. In here, you know, what is it like to be there? They're only now creating their own opportunities, and today, thanks to the Driehaus Foundation. Because I've spent my career as a practicing architect, naturally I've been a student of how people experience architecture, the places we design for them, and why they respond the ways they do. And so I've been trying to understand and translate the accumulating scientific insights into the very different language and context of day-to-day design practice. But from the start, there's been a problem, a practical problem. Architects facing fast-moving human sciences are encountering a whole new world of cascading insights from a range of fields of knowledge, and add to that the complexity of what we call experience or what we call design process. They're all assembled from uncounted interacting fragments of neural activity, triggered in microseconds in multiple parts of the brain and body, and they engage everything we are. In Harry's words, a whole body act. As a result, designers who were excited by the content of the new research results that they'd just been discovering were looking for and expected to find some kind of simplifying structure for the flood of new information. First, to organize it, not so much in disciplines or elements of architecture, but into terms of complete physical, emotional, intellectual, social, spiritual, decision-making human beings. And second, we needed a way to integrate it into or replace step by step the momentum of the design world's established education and practice. Equally important, because architecture is created by teams of people, all of us needed a way that new ideas could be incorporated into day-to-day collaboration with dozens of other professionals, clients and bureaucrats and politicians and publics, and often angry publics, and all of them secure in their own beliefs, most of them skeptical of avant-garde architects, and all of them facing the reality that their intuitions were wrong. In other words, to build bridges between the sciences and architectural practice, we needed a clear, comprehensive, carefully reasoned perspective, together with a tangible, visible, authoritative way to frame what we were learning. The common sense answer was to take a new look at humanism. Once that word is separated from its years of accumulated philosophical and moral baggage, and we refresh it with today's developing science, it simply means anchoring our thought not in, say, space-time or deconstruction, but in understanding the human understanding of human lives, of human nature, or better, understanding of days in the life of people. In a sense, accepting Thoreau's challenge to architects to affect the quality of the day, that is the highest of arts. Or in the words of this symposium's thematic statement, approaching architecture as a multisensory, whole organism experience. And that in turn means recognizing, means recognizing and working with what's going on in this restless, interacting worlds of the mind and body, the whole memory process, imagination, flows of perception, movements, powerful body chemistry and feelings, reasoning, fleeting thoughts, and people's beliefs of the moment. The important point for architecture is that what's happening in here adds up to a context, the primary context that gives meaning and value to the places we build. In one sense, we're like an organizing framework. In another, we're like a filter. And in another, we experience our environments through the lens of ourselves. Or in the words of a long-time proverb, 2/3 of what we see is behind our eyes. In this connection, the images that I'm going to be showing are all hand-drawn sketches. Because as many of you have discovered, we learn important things about a place by engaging the hands in sketching it. I'll return to humanism in a moment, but first let's look at the Spanish steps in Rome. Built at a time when a prevailing humanism created another of those places where whole arrays of people spend significant time, energy, and resources just for the pleasure of being there. And this place illustrates, too, how I'm using the word architecture. It's a shorthand for architecture, landscapes, and urban places, essentially the whole built environment. While each profession may focus on itself, we are responding consciously, but mostly unconsciously, to the total place that our senses discover. And I'm not distinguishing between architecture and not architecture or mere building. It's the total environment, the work of 1,000 designers over years that we engage every day. Some of it fine works of art, some not, but it's a fusion, that mix that shapes our days and shapes our lives. Now, back to humanism. The concept is not something opposed to modernism. That's a common way of thinking, and it's a dead end. Humanism is not a style, it's a description of a place where styles are born. Today's mainstream humanism is skewed because it's still based on out-of-date science. And to understand how shallow and random our design professions are, our design profession's grasp of human nature is in practice. Look at the entertainment or marketing businesses or political campaigns For decades, they've been applying human sciences very skillfully, and as a result, they are the ones taking the lead in shaping our culture, and including our profession. They're the ones creating the starchitects and the branding, and their successes make you realize how scientifically impoverished architecture has become. But there are bright spots. Well, the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao shows one example of what we can do. Again, millions of different kinds of people who could go anywhere in the world have been going here for no other reason than just to experience what it's like to be there. And that project has had an energizing response in its city as well. So I wrote a book to communicate with the young architects. First is notes for people in my own firm. I knew that their beliefs about human nature were what motivates their design, and I wanted them at all levels of talent and training, not just the gifted elite, to be released from the inertia of convention and simply by understanding you, their audience, to be able to innovate with confidence. And I knew we were having some success when one of our clients told us, "What I like about you guys is that you never do what I tell you to do. You do what the people who matter to me want me to do." Now, a brief outline of how we've been shaping our design decisions. The starting point, naturally, was learning about our human origins, human evolution, because I wanted to understand first the motivation that leads us to build and the meanings in our lives of those places. Cognitive scientist Steven Pinker has summarized evolution neatly for us. Genes selfishly spread themselves. They do it by the way they build our brains, by making us enjoy life, health, sex, friends, and children, and pursuing those pleasures. The genes buy a lottery ticket for a representation in the next generation, with odds that were favorable in the environment in which we involved. Put into terms of architecture, when the forms and spatial experiences we build for ourselves on the light and the color and the feelings of comfort or moods and ideas or the functions or fitness of a place for our purposes, when they trigger the feelings we call enjoyment, we sense we're enhancing our lives or mastering our environment, and we're winning the lottery, where the prize is surviving, living well, and producing healthy children. Neuter called this survival through design, and another architect, educator who also built bridges to the sciences, Grant Hildebrand, spelled out in clear, persuasive detail in his Origins of Architectural Pleasure. Different as we think we are, we're all still so much alike that those pleasures have produced worldwide standards of beauty like the Taj Mahal or Greek temples or English landscapes that have commanded respect and inspired imitation across cultures and continents through revolutions over millennia. And now we think we're beginning to learn why that happens. We started by building on Hildebrand's and others' ideas that a practical way to explore the origins of design decisions and our responses is through predilections, our inborn predispositions or preferences to think and act in certain ways and not in others. We feel them constantly as desires and needs, impulses, craving, taboos, intuitions, and specifically we see them at work every day, every hour, in our innate competition and our empathy with each other in our building communities. And in architecture, they're embedded in design vocabularies. Think about the almost universal preference for forest and savanna landscapes, or the impulse to find shelter that offers refuge and prospect, which we experience in the great Olmsted parks, along with his clever challenges to our other inborn impulses to explore and take risks, and of course the sense of refreshment and reassurance that we enjoy when we're immersed in the fertility and energy and aesthetic experience of the natural world. And we're powerfully drawn both by the comfortable familiar and the seductive lure of the new. And beyond that, we're drawn, often driven, to explore the enormous complexity that we encounter every day, which we then simplify into practical patterns that we can live by using theories and narratives, and especially maps. We build our own internal maps of both ourselves and our surroundings, not so much as they are, but as the way we experience them. They're not necessarily as striking as the Noli map in Rome, but the point is that this is a selectively urban design-based map with public spaces, exterior and interior, connected and rendered in a way you could physically experience them when you're in Rome. And taking this example a step further, in a study called The Image of the City, urban designer Kevin Lynch at MIT seemed to uncover a part of an inborn, already prepared mapping structure. He was studying our recurring search for orientation, sometimes panicked search for orientation, and his studies of the legibility of cities, and starting with its edges, districts, paths and nodes and landmarks, and later much expanded, quickly became a well-used part of the wisdom of the design professions. And another example, we're born symbol makers. The places we design, in effect, live separate lives as symbols, and their meanings for each of us can lead into a world of sacred places and what's called spiritual experience. And we're born storytellers. We can't resist searching out causes and effects or clues to unfolding plot lines and mysteries. We compose our own lives into narrative flows, and we do the same with architecture as we link ourselves together with stories. And then when we enter an environment, whether this spectacular Garnier Opera House in Paris, or a village, or our home territory, we in effect enter a story that's already underway. And as it engages our interest, we weave it, or not, into the ongoing story of our own lives. When I was a small-town kid, first visiting Chicago, I did just that with this dramatic piece of urban design. Or at Mont Saint-Michel, another of those places where arrays of people go just to experience being there. A visit falls naturally into a story, into the drama of a journey, and we take pleasure in the distant offshore rock, the winding climb up through the village, up to the refuge under the protection of the Archangel, and then from the refuge to the endless prospect, outward and upward, and onto heaven if you choose. I'm only touching the surface here, of course, but the point is that predilections are essentially innate, evolved survival strategies of our species. They're biological wisdom, a sapiens of a Homo sapiens, coded into our genes, and their power comes from the way they're linked to body chemistry and emotions, and from their speed. They come into play faster than thought. Naturally, these basic evolved predilections, like the rest of our minds and bodies, become fleshed out by experience over a lifetime, and over time we elaborate them into richly detailed patterns of beliefs, and like architectural theories or patterns of history or ideologies of religions and complex social organizations. that our culture weaves through us, and specific details of any one of these beliefs or theories may seem arbitrary, but the original underlying evolved motivations and meanings are not optional. Predilections are an integral part of a perception, a creative force in whatever we may try to design, and often the dominant force in the experience of architecture. Architect Louis Kahn, who usually got it right, said it this way: what will be has always been. Now I want to change the subject, change the perspective. First, when we encounter built environments, we're curious about what this place can do to me or for me. And we've been prepared to accelerate our learning by understanding one kind of thing in terms of another that we already know well. And what we know best is ourselves. And for millennia, architecture has routinely been conceived as and perceived as in terms of the human mind and body, with analogies and allusions and metaphors. And without thinking, we talk about this magnificent place, St. Peter's in Rome, in terms of the embracing arms of the Mother Church. And we don't even try to describe our experience of architecture, or experience of any kind for that matter, without using the words and concepts that describe ourselves: boundaries, balance, rhythms, energy, repose, aloof, smart, and male-female differences, of course. And we go on to analogies with our other arts, like choreography, pleasures that we've created for ourselves because of who we are and what we are. In this connection, philosopher Alain de Botton, who wrote the book and TV show about architecture of happiness, who Kim quoted earlier, put it this way: when experiencing buildings, we infuse them with life and then ask, what kind of human being would this place be? We even go on to bond with places or fall in love with places that we build, as many have done here. This line of thought was spelled out in a book I should have been reading in school, back along Space-Time and Architecture. It's Geoffrey Scott's The Architecture of Humanism. The whole of architecture, says Scott, is invested by us with human movement and human moods, given clarity and value by our intellect. Then what the body senses and feels, the mind tries to understand by discovering what kind of coherent fitness we're aware of, what kind of coherent fitness that we're aware of in our own three-dimensional selves. Scott was focusing on classical forms, of course. He was working in Rome and with Bernard Berenson, and he pointed out that when we sense an arch spring, towers soar, a dome swell, or a pathway open, we respond with an unconscious, mimetic instinct that, he says, becomes our real delight. He was applying architecture ideas that art historians and philosophers were debating at the time. That was 1914. And today's neurosciences have been able to probe and explain to architects. Specifically, we spontaneously tend to reflect, to mirror the movements and feelings that we sense in architecture, just as we mirror the moods and actions of the people around us. In Scott's words, we transcribe ourselves in terms of architecture, and architecture in terms of ourselves. Today, this idea is enlarged and spelled out as embodied simulation. And in those terms, it's become one of the most valuable insights for a practicing designer. We'll be hearing much more about that today. Pursuing these ideas in our design practice, we find it useful to think of our mind and body as a physiological, psychological framework that gives a physical and emotional structure to an experience of architecture, or again, an experience of any kind. Here's an example. You recognize this, the University of Virginia, essentially as it was conceived by Jefferson. The domed library at the head, a framed heart, the arms reaching out like his imagination to an open continental frontier. And we find these kinds of mind and body structures and qualities and proportions everywhere we look or touch because they're in us. We treat the front of a place like a face and want to make eye contact, or rather contact with all of our senses. And a facade gets the most attention because of another prepared survival skill. We have an exceptional, we have an expectation and an ability through an enlarged part of the brain to extract enormously detailed, nuanced, actionable information from facial and body language. In addition, our whole body is an inescapable inescapable contest with gravity. We enjoy sensing the strength and skill and resourcefulness that built big, up, and high, because in here, this feels like achievement, success, abundance, as we pursue the continuing search for our place in hierarchies in the world. And today, as usual, that's done most dramatically in Dubai, Dubai architecture. Not only with the super tall Burj Al Arab Hotel, Burj Khalifa, the tall tower, Burj Khalifa, but with the Burj Al Arab Hotel, where gravity is challenged with these swelling wind-driven forms. Likewise, we live with a constant awareness of our own tangible axis and right-left symmetry. And all across the planet, we use this pattern to express legitimacy, authority, and to distinguish the places that we honor and value most, like this club. And again, that's just beginning. That's just a beginning. Think about how we organize our habitats into multiple functioning centers like our own, rhythms like our own, that to give a sense of human life, to build environments, and from human scale, how we try to make connections through graded transitions of scale to feel a part of the stories of places built at superhuman scale. And beyond height and scale, we seek out even more broadly and intensely the pleasures of transcending. Transcend every ambition we have to advance, every competitive desire you see on a city skyline is still constrained by our species' inborn weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Yet because these limits are paralleled by an imagination that has no limits, we are continually able to rise above them, and instead of adapting to an environment, mastering it and adapting it to us, releasing ourselves into new worlds that we ourselves have created. That's the story of the whole fabric of a Gothic cathedral. Because of those medieval centuries of technological revolution, we can still be transported by the soaring lines and space, sounds and scents, stories, and in a divine light into another higher existence. And transcendence is a significant part of the story of aesthetic experience as well. We dedicate immense resources of wealth and time and committed lifetimes to create and experience aesthetic pleasures. Now, a design team can understand why, how it works. We don't have to be bound by the conventional retreat into beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We can explore the eye of the beholder itself, or rather, the multi-sensory whole organism experience itself. But aesthetics is a bigger subject for another time, and I want to go back now to complete the perspective I'm calling humanism. To complete its usefulness in practice, humanism needs to encompass one more dimension of human experience. This one largely outside our skins. It's the intimate relationship we have with the rest of the world, the rest of the natural world. Because we co-evolved and we live fully integrated into the flows of energy and ecosystems, we can only fully understand what we're designing and building in the perspective of ecology, the total interrelationship between organisms, including us, and the environment, including our human settlements. And because we're so powerfully disruptive in any ecosystem we invade, the ecological sciences are as much human sciences as they are natural sciences. And as bridges are being built between ecology and architectural practice, well, we're showing how the rest of the natural world is another context, as important in its own way for practicing to understand, and ultimately is essential for responsible design as understanding the human mind and body. We've got a long way to go, but we've seen some successes. The brilliant work of ecologist Ian McHarg, the architects exploring ecology through biophilia and sustainability here at the California Academy of Sciences, or at Taliesin West, where you can experience the home school and studio of Frank Lloyd Wright, designed and built into the life of the desert, and at his Falling Water, where he shows us again the role of the natural world and ecology in the art of architecture. Or put another way, we're immersed in a natural world that is one more lens that focuses the meaning of what we build. Finally, what's important today is that discoveries in the foundations of human experience are as revolutionary in their own way as the rediscovery by humanists in the European Renaissance of the arts and natural philosophy of Greece and Rome. In those years, Western culture was becoming aware of new ways of thinking about nature and human nature, and that became a time of dazzling creativity. And now in our cultural moment, we have that opportunity again. Thank you.